Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Be Okay for our review discussion here of the Westworld Season 2 finale. I am Adam, also known as Drownedsnow on the forums, and I am already in the thing. And I am joined by Bina, who we thought was a soulless young executive, but is actually Dolores.
Hi, everyone. This is Bina 007, dialing in from Tokyo.
As well as Matt, who was not programmed to love, but he hopes to learn.
Yeah, I'm here. It's Blue Armor on the forums.
So I guess the last time we talked, it was episode 8. So I mean, technically, I guess we have 2 episodes here to cover. That's kind of one finale, but we can talk about whatever. But definitely, the episode just aired last night, the season finale, episode 10, The Passenger, which a lot happened, and we got very interesting conclusion to a lot of stories that seemed to be wrapped up, and of course some other cliffhangers and whatnot. What did you guys think?
Yeah, I think overall I liked it. It didn't. There were a couple areas that didn't quite stick the landing for me. Granted, I was judging it pretty harshly, I think, just because the season had done. First of all, it's much better than the first season, and I really enjoyed it overall. So I've kind of been, as it's been producing, more and more quality episodes, I've been, putting it, trying to keep it judged based on a higher standard. So it almost nailed it, but a little things here and there kind of worry me a little going forward. But overall, very solid season in general and a pretty good finale.
I really love this season. It had, I think, real forward momentum. A lot of shows lose me in season 2. I was really intrigued by it, maybe even more than season 1. I love the standalone episodes in Shogun World and Akachito. I thought they were superb. And actually, because I was spoiling myself on Reddit all day and on this Skype thread, I was a bit nervous for the finale, but I really loved it. I found it really satisfying. It wrapped up a lot of the storylines, which I appreciate, while also setting up season 3 and maybe season 7 with a fast jump forward in the epilogue. So, yeah, they're little nitpicks, but basically, I think for a show this complex, that's the George R.R. Martin problem, so many characters, so many ideas going on, I think they're still managing to keep the plate spinning more or less, which is really impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. I think they've done a lot of things this season where they avoided some of the major criticisms. It wasn't perfect by any means, but just look at the arc of Lee, the narrative designer, who goes out in this episode with a sacrifice, which felt earned, oddly enough. A guy who, the first couple episodes, were like, can you get rid of him already? Because he's useless, right?
You have to cue in some Bon Jovi going down in a blaze of glory.
I'm going down in a blaze of glory.
He is. He's the Jamie of this show, right? In a sort of slightly comic, sweary way.
Yeah.
I love that character. I'm glad he's gone. He's done his thing. But
he's kind of a privileged jerk who was finally confronted with something real and realized that, it resonated. I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, you are right. That it is. The staging of that might have been a little silly, but it was definitely a very well earned moment, and that speech was great.
Yeah, and they did say in after the episode, Lisa Joy, I think, was saying that speech. That's the speech you're supposed to see in the pilot episode,
right?
With Hector, and then the guest just shoots him before he gets to give it, and he's like, "Ugh, people ruin stories." So they've had that speech kind of, written for a while.
Right, yeah, and that's just like a great start to the moment too. It's like, sit down. It's my fucking speech anyway. I might as well give it.
Yeah, that is great.
I love the way he's created this host to be his better self, and then he realizes, I can do that, right? I can be that person. I think that's a really hopeful and beautiful thing, because he had the option to be rescued. The other humans got off the island, so it was a great
and
thing.
even right there, he's not necessarily going to get taken out. He can just say, "Oh, I give up. These guys have, kidnapped me."
Right. Yeah. He could have like stalled them for a little bit without dying, but whatever.
No. Yeah. It was great. Unlike sort of whatever happens to the Man in Black, these 2 episodes which was weird. But I guess that little after the credits scene, it was the whole point of that. I don't know. I felt like, yeah, he could have died before he killed his daughter, and it would have been fine. Weird, but fine.
Yeah, I think kind of the main problem with that is that, you know, in their attempt to, like, you know, continue create kind of a mystery and a moment in the episode where it's like, you know, hold up, what the fuck? It kind of like took away from actually then, you know, actually then showing like a legitimate end to like his character arc this season.
Yeah, whereas the Dolores reveal was actually a good, like, successful reveal, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Looking back at this season again will be interesting, I think. Which, I mean, I think a lot of people had suspected that maybe Charlotte was a host or something, but
yeah, that'd been
not that.
Well, I think the specific Dolores into Charlotte thing really took off at, you know, with episode 9, as to just making the rounds on the internet. So,
but I think I had my suspicions. There's an episode, maybe it's like 5 or 6 or something much earlier, where Charlotte says something to Bernard like, "Oh, you know, you've changed," or something. You know, there's something that she says that's so familiar and so cheeky that it must come from a closer relationship, and that's when I think it really got into motion.
Yeah, there definitely seemed to be something different there. But especially once you had that reveal that she had seen his past, or that like she, like, I don't know, when they find his bodies and you're like, wait a second, like, she seems not entirely surprised by that. So, yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, the main thing for me was like her not realizing or pretending not to know that he was a host, which felt like odd to me. I mean, that was like when they like find his other selves in like episode, you know, 6 or 7. It just, that felt strange that like she wouldn't have figured it out by then. So that was like kind of the main.
Well, but I mean, I guess in the timeline she hadn't really seen him. Right. During the whole cradle thing, like, you don't see him. We see that like Elsie comes down, but she never really saw him.
Right. Yeah, but in like the first couple of episodes of the season, like, he was acting real suspicious. Like, it was just kind of a little, it would be a little silly that she wouldn't have, you know, figured it out after that, or at least have some suspicion of it. So that was kind of, you know, a tell, you know, about halfway through the season. The other random note like I have for that is, like, as I was watching the episode, like, I was convinced that they had like dubbed Evan Rachel, like, or at least like mixed their two voices together in kind of like the sound editing stage, like for her dialogue. But that was just straight up Tessa Thompson just imitating Evan Rachel Wood's voice.
It was really good, right? Even
to a T.
The inflection, the way she kind of, her voice moves through a sentence was so spot on.
Yeah,
really fantastic.
So yeah, I'm glad they're keeping Tessa Thompson on this show.
Yeah, which is, I think, a good way to keep her around. And I mean, she even said, like, there's an interview where she was saying that her and Evan Rachel Wood had gotten together and kind of, she was like, so how do I play, you know, you, sort of thing. You know, gave her some tips. And,
I watched that behind the scenes episode or thing today at work. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, which did answer a few questions that I guess we kind of sort of knew, like that after the credits scene, they said that that is in the future, many years in the future, like in the real world. Yeah.
But that's a little confusing, that whole setup.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we still don't have near enough information for that. But yeah, I'm just happy that like that behind the scenes thing kind of confirmed that, like, you know, he was human throughout this entire season, you know.
Yeah. And maybe it could be that this is the last time that he went to the park, and so maybe that's when their data on him ends, so that's why it looks like he's maybe just relived that or something when he's showing up there, or I don't know. No,
well, they were. I mean, what they're testing for with this fidelity thing is to see if he ever makes a different choice. You know, in the same way where they talk about where James Dallas's conversation with Logan was kind of his central defining moment, like as a character. Like no matter how many simulations they ran, like they always got to that point. The Man in Black killing his daughter was his, point that through all the simulations he always ended up killing his daughter in that scene we saw in episode 9, and so that's kind of how
that's kind of what I was thinking, but then I guess when he sees her, she says, instead of like they're saying they're testing it, she was saying, well, we're trying to confirm it, like as if they think he's kind of already got there, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a little unclear. There's just he just makes the comment where he built, kept going through this park to try and prove that that their data couldn't define who he was, and yet through every simulation he always ends up in the same place. Yeah,
and which I find I don't know, what I find interesting is that I don't know if this end scene here is something that they're going to build on next season and build up to, or if that's just kind of the end of that, like maybe something they'll come back to much later.
If you read the interview in the Hollywood Reporter with Lisa Joy that came out after the final episode aired, it sounds like that is going to be in whatever is the final series. So they've really jumped forward for that.
Oh, so they'll like loop back around to it eventually.
Exactly, they're going to make their way towards that. And the other thing I find really interesting about that is, if you think a lot of the Reddit type discussion is about who's a host and who's a human, and both that interview with Lisa Joy and indeed if you see the transcript of the Q&A they did at the British Film Institute when they previewed the final episode on Tuesday of last week, Jonathan Nolan in particular I think is very interested in the idea that if you read recent scientific research and you look at brain mapping, apparently there are very specific things going on in the brain when you make a decision, and some of it is before you think you've made the decision. So the idea that humans and hosts aren't really that different, and then we are kind of living in loops. And it seems like they're very much trying to advance the idea that humans might think they have free will, but they really don't. That you're a collection of genes and memes, and under the same circumstances, you will always jump left, which I find really fascinating as a sort of a proposition. So actually, the Man in Black is like digging in his arm and he doesn't find a cord there. So they're very clearly telling us he's a host at the point of season 2, episode 10. But the idea is that even though he's a human and not a host, he will still make the same mistakes. He's irredeemable. So that's a very damning but very powerful.
You're not my daughter. You're probably just a robot. It's all about me.
Yeah, exactly.
Ugh. Yeah, him and Delos really had a lot in common. So let's go back to some of the happier parts of the finale. So we do get the Valley Beyond and the kind of the gate for the host to step through and upload themselves into Magical Cloud, which is cool and rewarding, but also a little I don't know, the tech of it is kind of undefined, like how they somehow, well, I mean, like not the fact that they can do it, but like the fact that she's like, well, I zapped them somewhere else where no one can get to them, but what happened? I mean, is that like a computer? And then what happens if the power goes out? Are they all dead? Like that's the only thing that's worrying me. Yeah, it's like a server that no one knows about, so they can't access it, but then no one can keep it running, or is this like they're part of like the internet now or something, or I don't know. It's, I think the point was not to go too into it, but just to let us know that like that's done. They did their thing. We're kind of done with all of those hosts. They got out, which is fine. But
yeah, it's a little silly, but it's fine. I'm happy.
Yeah. It's and I mean we get most of the Ghost Nation gets away and
they escape into
Dave's
Windows
daughter,
screensaver world and live happily ever after.
Yeah, and even old Teddy gets to wander alone.
Yeah, I kind of feel that there was another interview with Lisa Joy. She said it kind of felt weird that the culmination of these purely digital creatures' journey would be to enter our world. And actually, why do they even need that? Isn't it to live in a digital world? They're like beyond our world. So I kind of like the idea that it's kind of like a human arrogance to think that the culmination of their journey should be to
so they want to be us. Maybe they just want to go be left alone.
Yeah, there's something really ballsy about that, which I like.
Yeah, which I didn't expect. I didn't see that coming. I mean, maybe I should have, but I think it was a good choice. I don't know. It helped me to kind of think about it a little different way. Versus we have our really kind of our villain Dolores, who's like insists on like I must have their world. You know, that's like the evil choice.
Yeah, right. I guess. I mean, the key was kind of giving, the various hosts, I guess, different options on what they wanted to do. And yeah, it's good ending, similar to stuff we've seen with like San Junipero. The end of Her is very similar to, with just kind of like it's a positive, happy ending. Even if it's not very detailed. At least it was a good way to for us to imagine a positive ending. Leave it up to our imagination.
And so it also seems that only some of the hosts were really woken up, but they were all being pulled towards that. Like not even just the Ghost Nation and the people that were with them. It seemed like any host that was online somehow just got pulled there. At least from Westworld, we don't see any hosts from any of the other parks, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's mainly just because it was Ghost Nation leading this what's the word for it? Like Odyssey or
pilgrimage.
Whatever. Yeah, there you go, pilgrimage. So yeah, I think it's just mainly because it was Ghost Nation leading
right,
it.
And they don't know about the other parks. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So they're all screwed, and they're just going to be reset and rebooted, and everything's fine. We're going to open the park again. It still is crazy to me that that's their goal.
Yeah, it's a tough one to swallow.
Because dozens, at least, if not hundreds of millionaires have just been murdered.
Right, yeah, but I mean, presumably there's, million. I mean, they said they have like 3 to 4 million people like on that file in the Forge. Like that's a lot.
Right. But I mean, but my point is, if like 500 people died at Disneyland tomorrow, would they be trying to open it again in a year?
Right.
Would they go out of business paying everyone? I mean, what would happen?
I mean, theme parks, we have theme parks with roller coaster accidents where people die. I mean, Alton Towers in England had that. They still reopened. I think the amount of investment
I wonder what's the largest loss of life, though?
I still think that, marketing can do whatever and people will come back from it. And also, how do you know that they're going to reveal that those people died?
Yeah, that's right. That's the main thing.
They have the ability to clone everyone. You don't
their families would come looking for them. But yeah, well, no, they don't really have the ability to clone them anymore if she destroyed all of the people backups, right?
That's true.
Yeah. I don't think right. Yeah, that would.
So I imagine they can pay off some people. Some people may. You know what? A large percentage of the people probably come there in secret. So if they disappear, no one knows they were there. I could see that, but obviously some people, their family will be like, well, he was going to Westworld, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a little tough without kind of knowing a lot about the outside world and how everything and how like the economy and governments are set up in this timeline.
I suppose in a society where these people were average people coming in, you could offer them millions of dollars and probably keep them quiet. But in a society where they're coming in, probably already rich, that's a bit more of a problem. I'm just curious if they'll show us that next season, if the park actually reopens, what goes on there. But I do think we're gonna not spend so much time looking at the park, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, but then Lisa Joy said we are going to see other worlds. And I think the notion that the park will try to be open, even if they eventually decide they can't go forward with that because of publicity, is what saves Maeve, right? Because if the park weren't going to reopen, they'd already taken that decision.
Right, her crew would all just be disposed.
Yeah, they'd just be like, incinerate all the host bodies. So I think, to a certain extent, I don't think it's ridiculous to say that we're still only 3 weeks after the massacre, right? And people like Hale haven't yet got off the island or are just getting off the island. So the idea that the Delos board has yet made that decision. I mean, surely you just assume
that's true.
You keep everything
in
case you open, and then you look at things more calmly and decide what you're really going to do.
I mean, it's been 2 weeks, but really it's only been maybe 24 hours since they've kind of reestablished a sense of control on the island.
Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, the combination of
and I mean, Charlotte would be a big part of that decision, wouldn't she?
Right. Yeah, that would be interesting to see what Dolores's opinion on that is, and how she wants to try and influence the board as to whether or not to keep the park open or certain projects running. But
so I do have. I mean, so Ford obviously set a whole lot of stuff up between Arnold and Ford. You've got this world that's set up. You've got a way for them to get out. You've got a printing facility at Arnold's old house set up for Dolores. Stubbs is maybe a host. Yeah, it's all a bit
Yeah, with a
confusing.
nudge and a wink. I think that definitely is the case.
Yeah. So, I mean, given all of that, I don't know if there's an end game, or I mean, I guess he's on the way out, so he just wanted to kind of see what would happen, give his creations a chance.
Oh, you're talking about
yeah.
Ford?
Ford, yeah. I mean, he set all this up, and it's a bit odd. I mean, it was fitting, I think, that Dolores brings back Arnold in the end, because Bernard, which we kind of always thought that's what he was, I guess. But what was I saying? But yeah, so it's kind of fitting that she does that, because I think she thinks that she needs a foil, maybe so that she doesn't go too far. She knows herself, which is very interesting. But
I actually thought it was weak. I thought it was kind of like they just want to keep the Bernard character, the actor, around. Jeffrey Wright.
They could have done that other ways. I mean, I don't know. I really liked it, because I felt that the fact that, and I mean, they could have just done it saying, well, he killed me, but he brought me back. So now I killed him to get him off the island, and I brought him back. I owed him one.
Dolores
queen.
just kept doing stuff like, saving the man in black ring. Like, she just kept keeping characters around her, and you just felt...
Well, yeah, the whole thing where she saved him only to have him, like, have his gun blow up and then leave him for dead. I mean, that was weird. He served no function in that kind of final bit there, other than to let her give another speech, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's where kind of my main, like, qualm with the episode comes up. It's kind of those two moments of kind of the editing around the Man in Black, like traveling here, and then the mystery and trying to keep things hidden from us, and unreliable narrator and stuff. I just think that weakened that part of the story, where it didn't give kind of a clear cut resolution on his journey throughout the season. And then the other part with kind of the back and forth between the two timelines of the final stand, and then Dolores at the Forge, and then them going back to the Forge in the 2 weeks later timeline, where it kind of undercut it a little bit, where you have all these like robots making their final last stand, but then it's all for naught, because Dolores is deciding to destroy this the San Junipero world. So then you have to like go back and have Bernard fix it, and it's just it's a little awkward, and like the pacing of it just like took
it was a bit of an awkward loop to close, because they wanted to have these two timelines through the season to tell the narrative that way and have their surprises.
Yeah, and so I feel like it just really hurt kind of the impact, the emotional impact of Maeve's last stand, by having it be all for naught until Bernard is able to then, go back around and fix it.
I mean, it kind of wasn't. I mean, she did. I don't know. I felt like she could have ran into the damn portal. She had time, but that's a whole other thing.
Right?
It was
that
still very touching.
Right, but she didn't want to. Like, it was my...
Yeah, I think that was more of a thing of it. Where she didn't want to go.
Yeah. And then the other part is I was expecting like a full like Neo showdown between Thandie Newton and Clementine, and just never got it.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, Clementine's basically just an empty shell riding like the apocalypse program,
but she's still Maeve's ward, where you had that.
True.
You had that reflected in the Shogun World episode, where they, showed a similar side to that, where their versions of Maeve and Clementine were essentially another mother and daughter,
very close,
daughter pair, and so it just seemed like that they were they were just hinting at, a final showdown between this, mother and daughter like figure. And then they just kind of like, I don't know. She has that cool like freeze everyone around her for a few seconds, but I don't know. It just, I just wanted, and I'm also, it's probably unfair. I'm judging this kind of by the, the best climactic moments that I've ever read, in like the fantasy genre. Just because, this season has been so good where I was kind of, expecting a real big, spectacular finish like that and just didn't quite get it. So, it's partially on.
I mean, it's kind of like, I think you said earlier, it's like if the Clegane brothers meet each other again, but just walk away, a cold shower it.
I didn't mind it at all because
I didn't mind it. But
Clementine is so not Clementine anymore. And Tandy Newton, the Maeve scene where she does hold off everyone is so visually powerful and emotionally powerful as she loses Hector and as her daughter goes with Aksheta, and potentially also that's, the resurrection of his wife, but maybe that's Ford. But there's so much emotion there. The acting is so beautiful, the flashbacks to her life as she dies. Mm-hmm. And personally, I love Tandy Newton, so more Tandy Newton is always good, and I want her to be James Bond. But I just feel that the arc is so beautiful. To me, it's a bit like The Hound. I just want it to rest now. I actually don't. I've come to the conclusion, thinking about it more, that I don't want her back next season. I don't even want Felix and Sylvester back, or Hector, or any of those guys. I think, like Ghost Mason, they have reached the end of their arc, and let them rest. It's beautiful. They've earned it. Just let them rest.
Yeah,
I feel like we're going to get them back most likely in some form, but I would be perfectly fine to to kind of consign it the way it's gone.
Yeah, I guess. It's true. It was mainly my mindset, like as I was watching the episode, where I recognized like the beautiful moment that was happening around me, but all I could think about was the fact, like, okay, well, how are they gonna fix it so that the forge doesn't blow up? Like I was thinking ahead too much, and so it took me out of the scene because I was just like, well, wait, hold up. Like we need to solve, this whole problem first before we can have, to make sure the hosts do get their happy ending that they want.
Yeah. And the forge is just crazy. It's, a million times bigger than the cradle, obviously, because there's a lot more in there. Mm-hmm. But the reveal that like when Delos bought the park, he just like went in there and was like a complete asshole. But like all to myself, like, yep, that sounds about right.
Yeah, that was.
But so they've deleted the humans backup supposedly. But I guess because we do get William in that flash forward, which anyway. So when Dolores. Halores is leaving, she's got in her purse like 5 or 6 eggs, and we know that one of them must be Bernard. Like, where the heck? The only other egg I can think of that she got was Teddy, but then she uploaded him, so he should be wiped. So like along the way, she picked up like some randos or copied some of the people that weren't uploaded, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm kind of like, it's...
because between there and the beach, she could have done a lot. She could have stopped by the mesa and done whatever she needed to. I'm just curious. I'm trying to think of who would be available to her that she would, think would be useful off the island.
Right. Yeah. Because we're recording this so like early, I haven't like taken the time to sit down and think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I just have no clue because the people that we see, they're pretty much all, they went through the portal, or you've got the crew of Maeve's crew, which were all there on the beach. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough to tell.
Maybe she revived like the bartender or something. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of just like waiting, wait for Reddit to just throw out like, as many different theories as possible.
They're going to be people from Roman world.
Yeah, you can review them all and see which one you like best.
There just has to be someone, I think, whatever it is, she's gotten someone who can pretend to be Charlotte and do whatever it is they're trying to do.
Yeah, she would need like people to help her, infiltrate either Delos or whatever else she needs them to do. Is kind of her first step, but I can't really think of who she would take, or if she would take kind of the data from various real world people and then kind of like, I don't know, build a few replicants out of them like she did with Arnold to replace, their human counterparts.
Yeah, maybe. I guess in some way we're gonna get Emily back regardless. So
I hope so. We need more Katja Herbers.
Yeah, I still can't get over how much of an asshole William is, but whatever. And then my wife gave me a strange look because when I was like, oh no, she's about to shoot Elsie, when she's like, hold on, you just sit here, Bernard, I'm gonna make things better. And Charlotte gets this look on her face, like I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I like screamed at the TV. My wife's like, what? I'm like, but I mean, I knew she was probably gonna die, but thought maybe she got off the island or something instead.
Yeah, it was definitely the logical move on Charlotte's part.
Yeah, but it was still sad. So I mean, they brought her back, killed her. Like after kind of our discussion, the Skype thread, thinking about it, the only thing that really bothered me about her story arc is that her fate was kind of left really up in the air and presumably decided. I wouldn't be as mad about it if they had just had a solid, a better conclusion to her storyline in season 1. And if it just felt like one, if her storyline felt like one continuous arc rather than all this, looping her back around for a need.
Rather than all. I mean, it's due to the rewrites and stuff where just her story arc start felt, chopped up in bits and pieces where they got to figure stuff out.
It was much more coherent this season.
Yeah, I mean, and the same thing happened with Stubbs, where they clearly decided he was a host in the off season. That clearly was not a plot
I mean,
point in season
he's
1.
another one that I thought oh, he's probably dead.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I just it was a nice little twist if they had set it up better. But yeah, I mean, he's a character I had the most. I just didn't care about him this season just because I can't take anything you said seriously because you were so incompetent in season 1.
Yeah, I pretty much haven't cared about him until this final scene where he's like, I may be a host, or at the very least I'm in on something. And you're like, what?
Right, yeah. I know, it's probably the toughest part of, long form storytelling in the fantasy sci-fi genre because you're everyone's trying to go for those big reveals, well into your story, but you have to put in the foreshadowing, otherwise the point's not going to land.
Yeah, but sometimes I think they have purposely skipped the foreshadowing for the reveal, and that doesn't always work out. And sometimes
I don't like that style either. Just because, I mean, in this.
I do think if you look back at Hale in the 2 weeks later timeline through the season, it'll probably seem really obvious.
Yeah,
watching her because something has seemed off about her, but I did not. I suspected that maybe Dolores is in Arnold, or maybe Bernard, maybe Ted. The theory after the first couple weeks was Teddy could be in Bernard. I think pretty much they thought everyone was in Bernard at one point. So. And it was Occam's razor, right? He's just himself, but messed up. Okay.
Yeah. So that's my point. Where that reveal was really good because they set up a clear foreshadowing event to that.
All right, you guys. Anything else of note in these last 2 episodes? Other than episode 9, I mostly just remember how much of an asshole William is.
Right, yeah. You would have to run me through the plot just because I'm just trying to wrap my head around this.
My major takeaway from episode 9 was just how strongly it was paralleling Dolores and William, which was ironic because
that's right.
It's kind of like their love story that kicked off this whole Westworld journey for us as a young man. I think when he's talking with his wife, it's very clear that he never loved her. He loved Dolores, or was obsessed with her, is probably a better characterization of that, and that's been the driving force of his life. But the idea that Dolores sets her up when she becomes woke at the end of season 1 in opposition to this world that William has to a large extent created, and yet they become the same. So this idea that they have both driven the people who love them to suicide because both of those people discover or finally understand how truly excessive they are and without limits in their, search for violence, I think was beautifully done. And I think what's amazing is the Teddy scene coming from an actor like James Marsden, who's always played, just sort of like eye candy, was really moving. I think it was probably his career best acting, or the first time he's been allowed to act like that. And it was just incredibly devastating, like just seeing Dolores realize what he's about to do, but beautiful. And I think, season 2 has all been about freedom of choice, and the hosts have it and the humans don't. And so Maeve chooses to sacrifice herself. So does Hector. Teddy chooses suicide. The Ghost Nation chooses survival in this new digital world. Dolores chooses to go into the real world. But Dolores' arc is about learning that others can have that choice too. But I think a lot of that comes through Teddy. It comes through realizing that the man she loves made this very powerful choice because of what she did. And that's her awakening, her second awakening. And on the other side, you have William and his wife. And I just thought the actress who played his wife, who we haven't seen a great deal of, like Teddy, still did a very good
Seal
job.
Award.
Yeah, she still did a fantastic job at making that feel very emotional. But I think that whole thing with William really gave shade and depth to his daughter's character, because she's actually pretty ruthless, right? She wants to put her mum in the asylum again. And then,
she seemed more ruthless than him in those flashbacks, and he seemed like just constantly on the edge of like genuine compassion. And I mean, I think both him and Dolores, like Dolores could have just made that decision to leave Teddy alone and to work, and it would have changed everything. And William could have made that decision to just kind of open up to his wife and be like, "No, I have loved you this whole time," or and he just remains silent.
Yeah, well, he thought she was asleep, right, when he was making his big confession, but there was still an honesty there from William, and a self-awareness, which was surprisingly positive. But the daughter turns out to be much more. She's not this hurt little daughter who's out to get attention from daddy. I mean, she's really ruthless too. And the idea that
she probably was going to torture him.
Yeah, the idea that she was going to commit her mum to an asylum, and basically she came to the park to do the same thing to her dad, is pretty hardcore. So it makes me excited that she's still around in some form in later seasons, because where I feel I've had Maeve's emotional and psychological journey, I don't feel I've had the daughter's, and I think that's going to be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think my disappointment with her is, I mean, from the moment she was introduced, I just said, well, I hope that she's not just, used as a throwaway and killed to, advance William's journey, which basically she was. But they still, I guess, have given themselves room to expand upon that, and I hope they do.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add that particular point. That was couldn't have said better myself.
Let's see, what else? I'm trying to think. There were a couple things brought up, like you said you read that Lisa Joy interview.
I mean, I did. I've read everything she said. She seems to be like the public face of that writing team.
Yeah, and she seems to just be really genuinely excited about the show, and I think they're doing a pretty good job. And
yeah, she doesn't ask me anything on Reddit, and it's clear that she really loves the fans getting involved in the puzzle solving. And I think that what I love about this show is, unlike Lost, the criticism of Lost, they genuinely do try and solve a lot of the puzzles at the end of each season.
Yeah.
There are some things they allow to sort of go forward, but they really do want to give people as much closure as they can. And the other thing I really like is where they see that people are maybe misinterpreting things, they really course correct them quickly. So both on the Vanity Fair podcast, where the actress playing Elsie was interviewed and the director of the episode, and both on the Lisa Joy interviews, they're very quick to clarify, yes, MIB was human all season 2. Like if they think, you can tell that she's on the Reddit, so she thinks people are going a little off, she brings them back. So I love that. To me, this is the way to engage with fans and to respect the fact that mysteries have to be closed in the way that Lost never did, and George R. R. Martin sadly probably won't either.
Yeah, and we know that. But I really do love that too, because the fact of the matter is that they don't have to come out and like hang a lantern on it in the episode. But if for some reason like these theories keep spinning, like, oh man, is he human? Is he not? Yeah, they have after the episode, they have an interview and they say, just so we're clear, yeah, this scene, the post-credit scene, is in the real world decades later.
Yeah,
it's that's super simple. Thank you. Like,
it's the equivalent.
Like, focus on. They want you to focus on other things.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Like, don't waste your energy and spin your wheels. Like, it's like George coming out and saying, you know what, R plus L equals D is just don't move forward.
Yeah, but I mean, if you go and look at some of the Reddit threads, like some of the theories that have been spun, like, episode 2, 3, 4. I was like reading through some of these threads, and like some of them were pretty close, and some of them were extremely bizarre, and I think some of them were course corrected within an episode or two, by in an interview or something, saying like, well, that's kind of not what's really going on. Like, okay, or they were confirmed even. So I mean, that's a very interesting. In the age of TV shows being dropped in mass on Netflix and people binging through everything, and by the time you develop a theory, 2 hours later someone's watched the whole season. It's an interesting way to keep your fans engaged, and I think it's a positive.
100%. I mean, I think it's the best HBO's ever done at really engaging with an audience, and I think that's down to Lisa Joy actually. But even the fact of having that preview of the final episode on the Tuesday at the BFI, which was open to the public, right? It's just whoever bought the tickets first.
Oh,
and
really?
And a Q&A with both writers. So if I hadn't been in Asia, I would have definitely gone. But the idea of doing that, trusting the fandom, that if you just ask them politely on stage not to spoil this for other people.
I didn't know that. Yeah, because it wasn't floating around. Interesting.
And there were a couple of the people who were on Reddit, and he said, I'll share stuff that wasn't spoilery, and I'll give you the, some of the stuff. And people were saying, please PM me. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that because someone will let it slip, and that's going to ruin it for everyone. So I love the idea that there's this mutual respect seemingly between the fans and the writers, that they're not going to spoil it. And this gives the writers then the confidence to do things like that preview and that Q&A, which now that, we've seen the final episode, I'm hoping that a transcript of it will be published, because one of the editors did make a transcript of the Q&A, which will be interesting.
And this is a stark contrast between the way Game of Thrones has been handled on HBO with D&D, and the way they just straight up lie to fans in interviews and deflect things and say, oh, well, that was George or some bullshit, Yeah. I mean, I think they've, I don't know, purposely or not, but they have definitely lost a lot of trust.
Really?
So
I thought that was just a Dragon Demands being bonkers thing. Have they genuinely lied to fans?
Oh, so I mean, they've put out stuff, and it's obvious that they're just trying to misdirect you about spoilers or whatever, because they think that's what matters, and that's all anyone cares about, right? So, and then because they'll say, oh, well, this is definitely not happening, or that is, or whatever, and then the next season comes, or a couple episodes later, and you're like, well, that was bullshit. They're just trying to trick anyone who's trying to get information, which whatever. But there's a better way to handle that, I think. But yeah, I don't know. The Dragon Demands is a bit. That's not quite talking about that stuff.
I get the feeling that Lisa Joy and Christopher Nolan want to play fair with us, right? They want to create a puzzle, but they have some red herrings, but they want us to solve it. They're not trying to mess with us unless it's within the game, the rules of the game.
Yeah, exactly, because they very well could, but I think they've maybe I don't know if they noticed or not. Maybe that's just how they are. But I would think maybe they've noticed that that doesn't go over so well. Right. You don't need to play the games. Your audience, they're treating the audience like it's smart enough to understand what's going on, but also they're smart enough to understand that the audience might be getting the wrong message about some things. Because that's kind of the way they've written it. And instead of just outright lying or giving us PS, they like I said, they're engaging. They're doing AMAs. They're I mean, that's unusual on this level, I think.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key points as to why this season is better than the first one, is because I think they actually it's one of the few examples of a show really, or the writers really taking note as to what landed and kind of what didn't work, in their first season, and doing a better job of
but not in a way where they just go to the fanboys, okay, what do you want, and just give them whatever they want.
No, of course
either,
not.
Which you know what I mean, which is the brilliant part about it.
Yeah, they didn't adjust. They still wrote the story that they wanted to write. It was their style that they switched up, is to not having the whole season just be, a bunch of giant mysteries you're trying to like figure out, and then when people figure it out by episode 4 and they're still holding out till the episode 10 to actually, end it. Like, I think it just does a good job, whereas they kind of like set up some ideas, but they, were constantly revealing like new things throughout the season and not like trying to save a whole bunch of mysteries for the final episode. I think was a really good choice in
Totally
their
agree.
style of storytelling.
Yeah, it was a good mix of character-driven and also, narrative-driven storytelling.
Yeah, these
So-
standalone character-driven episodes. I know some people really were let down by that Shogun World episode.
Oh,
But
no, it's the
it's the best, right? And so
Yeah.
those Ghost
Yeah, I
Station
love it.
episode. But the balance is it's so well done. Even in the finale, I mean, there was a lot of action in the finale, but you still had these beautiful emotional payoffs, like the Maeve death scene, like Lee Sizemore in a slightly more comic way. That I just really admire the writing. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was
they gave the finale a full 90 minutes too. I feel like they just said, "Look, we need more time to finish this." And
and it
they
wasn't.
just gave them however much they wanted.
And it wasn't a padded 90 minutes. Like
No,
that's like a problem with. I mean, I haven't watched the show in years, but like The Walking Dead always does, like 90-minute like premieres and finales. But it just seems like,
Ugh.
they do like 90-minute stuff with like maybe 30 minutes of story, and then everything else is just like padding for an hour. Whereas this one, like the 90 minutes was
they just
full.
couldn't tell the story without that time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have one question before I need to dial off and go do some work, which is, I feel that by you guys helping me on the Skype last night as I was watching and Reddit, it's like I kind of figured out most stuff. But the final scene in the real world where you have Charlotte Hale's body with a Dolores ball in the mind, and then you have a seemingly modern world Dolores and a Bernard. Is the other Dolores, has she created a new body for herself and put her mind in her, but Charlotte Hale still got a different mind in it?
Yeah, I mean that's.
Or is that just is that Dolores and that the
Like
Dolores,
two Doloreses?
Bernard? Are they like forward? Are they just sort of like in their own little?
So she says. Tessa Thompson says specifically, in the after the episode thing, because that's the question that I have wondering, what's going on, and they say specifically, like, part of the question there is, well, who now is in this body, because Dolores went and made her body because she wanted her body back, so she's made a copy for herself. So who's that holding the gun in Charlotte's body, and like that's kind of like find out next season sort of thing.
Yeah, presumably it's one of the 5.
Yeah, so it could have been
pearls.
some weird right whoever those are. It could have been like, well, you could have spent, a year or however long to the next season coming up with theories of like, well, that's in their mind, or that's their, I mean, it could very well be that maybe she copied herself and it's 2 Doloreses, who knows? But I mean, that's, they've at least confirmed for us that all takes place in the real world. That's all physical, and that everyone's there. Well, I mean, it makes sense if she's lived in that body for so long. She just wants her own body, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think that's all it was.
No. It definitely. Just for narrative purpose and because
keeping both actors.
Yeah, you need to keep both actors on the thing. So she needs to have her own body and then someone else in Charlotte Hale's body. Because that's also the thing where it's kind of Maeve took over a large portion of the series. I don't think she's going to have a bigger role if she comes back in season 3. So I think that Evan Rachel Wood is going to be kind of the standalone lead for whatever the next season is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it very much becomes going from Evan Rachel Wood and Thandie Newton and Anthony Hopkins and Bernard. So it goes from 4 to 2, right? And then Man in Black.
Right.
It'll be interesting
and then
to
I
see
think
if they bring on another big actor, like a big name actor, to sort of fill up that space a little bit.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
that wouldn't surprise me.
They'll
like
bring
a
on
real world Delos person or something.
Exactly. They'll bring on 1 or 2 board members.
Now, he's alive. He's gone Jamie, so he's got no hand. He's in the real world interacting with the board. Presumably, there is going to be some tussle about what the park is. Do they know about the secret project? Are they reopening? So there's got to be some counterpart, maybe the CEO of the board or something that he has to go up against. But it sounds to me like they haven't even got to that part of the writing yet.
No, I doubt they've I assume it's going to take I assume it's going to take probably a couple of years before a third
Yeah.
season
We're
comes
getting this
out.
in 2020, I would imagine, right? So,
Yeah, I would expect.
Yeah,
that.
I would get that. I mean, they took some time to do this. We have Game of Thrones to occupy us next year as the big thing, so they can take some time. You know, it costs a little less, I think, not to do it rushed, and it worked out, well enough for them. So.
And it's a weird show in a way because I do really anticipate it. I mean, it was really eating me up like yesterday, like waiting to watch it. But I think it's kind of weird that it doesn't kind of bug me between seasons in the way that shows like BSG did. So
Right.
there's so much in it. I feel I can now sit with this for a while. And when the new season comes out, I'm going to be super happy to watch it. But it's okay. Like, I can have a year and a half. And
yeah, there's plenty of other stuff
so
to occupy us.
Right.
Yeah,
We have
exactly.
And
so much
it was,
other content.
You had enough satisfying resolution in this finale that I think
Exactly. So
it doesn't just
my
leave you
exact
being
final
so
point.
pissed off.
Yeah, they give you, and maybe it's because they know they have such big gaps between series. They're very kind. Like, they really do resolve the vast majority of stuff. They leave enough that's out there that's intellectually interesting, but the emotional storylines, like Teddy, Maeve, what happens to Ghost Nation, all of that is resolved. So I feel, that they really do play fair. And on that happy note of a show that I don't think, it's been a long while since the season 2 has made me even more excited about what you can do with a medium of TV and storytelling and just visual stuff. If you all can watch this on a projector on a big screen, do, because it's gorgeous. It's, I love this show, and I my gratitude is huge. And on that note, I'm going to go earn some money.
All right. That's probably our cue then, eh, Matt?
Yeah, sure.
No, you guys can carry on for sure. Thank you very much for listening. And also, actually, Adam, just thank you very much for editing and putting these all out. I mean, this has been quite the burden in season 2, but thank you for doing it.
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, it hasn't been every week, and it's been a lot of fun. So it's been good to talk about.
Bye, guys.
All right. Later, Bina. All right. Well, we'll convene again in the park in 2 years, I guess.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'll make like a final comment here, where I guess just a previous point randomly. Like, this is one of the few shows in this kind of new era of television where usually, like 90% of the time, I would prefer, a show to be binge-worthy and just have all episodes drop at once. I think this is one of the few that actually makes waiting for each episode week to week worth it. And those, like, intimate character, small cast episodes that focus on one or two characters really kind of adds to that.
I agree. And I think they intentionally designed that, knowing that people were waiting, and, the way that we've consumed things has changed, the way that a lot of our, television media has come out. And I mean, right now, the most series, when they end the season, you get a lot of, okay, there's sort of resolution with this story, but every character gets a cliffhanger,
right?
Because we want you coming back. Whoever your favorite character is, they got a cliffhanger. That's what a lot of shows are doing now.
I mean, that's still left over from the old style of television,
right?
Whereas now with more kind of long form, where it's one story arc over 10 to 13 episodes, you get more resolution out of stories in general than you do from the classic 22 episodes that are just, meant for you to watch week to week as individual standalone episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I think the end of this season of Walking Dead, I'm pretty sure Rick was on the train tracks with a train coming. We'll find out what happens in a few months.
Yeah, Andrew Lincoln said he's leaving the show.
He's leaving the show, I think, after this season. Yeah.
Right, yeah. So. That's whatever. I stopped watching that a long time ago.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, the other thing I just wanted to kind of expand upon, just the thoughts I kind of had at the end of our last podcast, is to like wondering where the story was going to go and what they were going to decide to do, if they were going to decide to stay in Westworld or if they were going to decide to actually, follow Dolores' storyline to its conclusion and bring her out into the real world. And it's interesting where this finale, it seems like they haven't fully committed one way or the other yet. They've left. I mean, I think they're clearly like they're probably more committed to Dolores' storyline the third season than they are for staying in the park. But like they still left that option open to like,
they've left the ability to reopen the park and reset some of that if they really want to.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's also probably just for marketing thing where if you can't, I don't know, you can't really do a third season of Westworld without at least having some scenes in the park. You still have to have the Westworld element.
Or maybe they closed the Westworld, but like I said, we find out a couple of the other parks, maybe they were untouched by all of this.
Right.
And then those are still going. Who knows?
Yeah, so that'd be interesting. And then kind of the other thing I've thought about is that I would prefer for the third season to have a significant time jump, and just to kind of throw us in media res and then have flashbacks if you need to, just because with with Dolores's plan, whatever they're gonna have with Dolores's plan is to take over the world or whatever. It's clearly going to take some time to develop. So I think they need to kind of send us, a few years down the line when she's already
right now we've gone 2 seasons and we've gone about a month in the main timeline. I mean, even though we went far into the past and, kind of caught up through history with flashbacks, but really the present time has not advanced very long.
Yeah.
So, I'd be perfectly fine. I mean, they could jump forward a decade and not worry about the actors because, most of them are hosts, right?
Right.
And they don't age. So.
Yeah. And they need to skip ahead, where if they're going to have the park reopen, they just need to skip to the, sometime in the future where it's already up and running again. And if they're going to continue storylines from there.
Yeah, we don't need to see them rebuilding or making the choice of what they're going to do next. Just give it to us. Yeah.
And that's the thing. If they're going to bring Maeve and company back, they pretty much just need to have them start hit the ground running with them, and not going through a whole thing of them trying to discover themselves again. They're going to just have to come back with the same knowledge they had before, and just be on a new mission if they're going to bring them back. Be interesting to see.
I agree. Westworld Season 3, Mars. Hey, if it happens, they stole it from me. So,
well, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Matt. And
I'm
going to see if I can get this out tonight.
Yep.
All right. Take it easy.
All right. See you, man.